Hello, this is Christy with Talks at Christy's Place. Yes, it's been a long time since I've done a podcast, and I couldn't decide whether to do it via the Audacity to Pivot podcast or the Talks at Christy's Place, because they both seem to be applicable for this short the messaging that I have today. And I hope to, get it all in and to keep it within the parameters that are set via the podcast. There's a lot going on. I had the good fortune of hearing Pastor Jamal Bernard, who is the son of Pastor A.R. Bernard, speak to a topic about, resilience. Pretty much was the theme of it, resilience. And he spoke from the context of a book called The Dip by Seth Godin. And so in that particular book, he referenced how there are two types of resilient people, and there is the pusher and then there is the overcomer. And so the reason why that message was so timely for me and really profound is because in this group or community that I belong to, a group of writers and artistic people and creatives, it's a small community of people. And so that messaging of resilience and perseverance has really been percolating to the top lately, largely due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I had someone in that group speak specifically to me and stating that, listen, I'm just exhausted. I gave everything that I had to do this thing. And I'm talking emotionally and physically and intellectually and financially. And it's all in pieces now because of this pandemic. And I just don't have any more of that to do this all over again. And my response was, you do, and you will. And if you didn't, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, and you wouldn't even be on this group call. So the reality is that we've all taken some hits, not only due to this global pandemic, but throughout our lives, we've all taken hits. We've had this trajectory, I know I have, of up and down and in and out, and this trajectory of something that looked like I was moving in the right direction, only to find myself at the bottom of that trajectory. And so I know this story. I know these concepts of resilience and pushing through and overcoming. I know this story. And so the thing that Pastor Bernard shared, some of the things that he shared that I want to just bullet point here, is that we have to know what to quit and when to quit. We have to know what to quit and when to quit. And if I could add to that, we have to know who to quit, because there are a lot of who's to quit when you are trying to focus and press in and persevere through a thing, in a thing. And if you don't have the right people support around you, there may be some tough decisions that have to be made in that space. And that's just one thing. And then there is the constant self-reflection bullet point that he mentioned. Constant self-reflection. And for me, self-reflection is as synonymous as breathing. I am a self-reflector. Self-reflection is my who and my do. I am a self-reflector. And I think that comes along with being a writer and a creative. And so that is paramount to this idea of starting over, albeit due to a global pandemic or otherwise. And so allowing your vision or dream to continually energize you was another bullet point. Revisit it. Remember the passion. Refocus yourself. Remember the thing that inspired you and caused you to move forward in your endeavor, your dream, your vision, remember that. Revisit it. Go back and see it. Talk to it. Speak to it. Just remember the passion. Draw on that. And so the final thing, the final bullet that I took note of was don't quit, re-strategize. So you don't quit, you re-strategize. And so reflection, response, and resilience are paramount to this thing, not only called life, but especially if you are a creative visionary, builder, artist, writer, anything in those groupings, it's really necessary. And so what I would like to do, if you just allow me some of your time, is I want to speak to the idea of timing when you are pursuing your purpose and bringing that purpose to life and giving that push, when you have to push that thing out into the world because it has grown inside of you. It has had its incubation period within you, and now it's time to push that thing out. Timing is paramount to the thing you are given life to. And so this podcast is purpose to speak to that. It's purpose to speak to the idea of timing in one's purpose and response to that timing. And though the resilience, once you have responded, the resilience, once you have put that thing out there, that's going to be necessary to move forward in the thing that you are alive to give life to, your purpose. So if I can read from Ecclesiastes 3, and if I could just read 1 through 8 for you, my hope is that you are able to hear it. Hear Ecclesiastes 1 through 8. Hear it. Because it has taken on a tone of cliche, because that's just what has happened with so many scriptures. It just becomes cliche-like. And this entire book of Ecclesiastes, if one would allow themselves to really let it speak to them, is certainly just one of many that you could actually live your life by. So if I could read 1 through 8, here I go. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which has been planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. And if there is one thing that I can extract because of its relevance, that we have certainly come to understand that there is a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Oh my, have we lived that verse of scripture? But what I would like to do is definitely speak to the timing of that in which you are to give birth to. So not many people know that I was once the owner of a lovely little cafe bookstore called Seashell Books and Things. And prior to that, I had a little small business where I would construct and write resumes for job seekers. I had a small side hustle of, inner decor and home decor. And so, writing and publishing books since 1996, I've been writing and publishing books. And so I share that to say is that for me, this thing has been a journey. And for most people, it has been a journey. And so when you see something manifest, it is not just out of thin air. It's been a process. It's been a journey. But what I have had to learn to do through those little ventures and endeavors, and the bookstore especially, it was heartbreaking for me to have to close my bookstore. I had just got it open. It was beautiful. I had a big old beautiful sign over the store, Seashell Books and Things. You'd ride down the street and you could see it a block ahead. But I had to close that bookstore because the timing was wrong. I went ahead, or maybe I missed, but the timing was the issue. And not only was the timing an issue as a result of either missed or premature timing, I was confronted with some major issues owning that bookstore. Everything from people damaging the store, from someone stealing my items out of the store. There were just several reasons, but the point of the matter is I had to know what to quit and when to quit. And as disappointing as it was, I had to close that bookstore. And that's just a sidebar that I want to mention, because what people tend to do is hear the word failure as if it's a derogatory word. Failure does not define you. It certainly doesn't define me, because if it did, I don't know where I'd be. But failure does not define you. And it certainly is not something that you are to look at as if it's some derogatory curse word. Failure is to have never tried to do the thing that you felt that you were to try to do. And to have not tried it is really where the failure lies. But to have not succeeded at it because you tried it is not failure. It is a part of the process. It is a part of the learning. It is a part of the journey. It is a part of the fitting the puzzle pieces together. I had someone say to me when I wrote my first book, he said, you're going to find later in life. He said this. He said, you're going to find later in life that all of the pieces, he was the graphic designer that did the book cover. He was in California, never laid eyes on him. He said, you're going to find that the pieces of your life following this book are going to continually fit together like a hand in glove. He was right. He was completely correct. And he said, you're going to get better at this as you go. And he was right about that too. So I share this to say also that you may become deflated because you find that the people that you thought supported you or had your back or you wanted to invite into your orbit as you move things along, you will find, not intentionally, I think, not intentionally, people will disappoint you. They don't wake up in the morning and say, I think I want to disappoint Christy today. That's not how that works. But in our flawed humanness,